Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspired Lady podcast. It's Belle Grubb, your host, and I am beyond excited for today's episode. So as you know, have been traveling a little bit more than I ever have. I went to Europe for the first time this summer and I got the travel bug, and I have been obsessed with all of the travel videos on TikTok. So wouldn't you know it, we've got Kasey here, who is a TikTok extraordinaire with all things travel, and I am so excited to talk to her today. She calls herself a digital nomad, which is so cool. I love that. And she's going to provide tips and resources all about budget traveling and also female solo traveling, because that's so intimidating, but she's going to break it down for us and make it a little bit easier to digest, and all the things to educate and inspire you to do all of your traveling dreams. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this conversation with Kasey. Okay, so Kasey, how we start every single episode is what we're drinking. So today I just have a vanilla almond milk latte, super chill. What do you have?
Well, I am drinking a flavored soda water right now. I just finished lunch a little bit ago, so I'm drinking what's
I love
left.
that. That's so awesome. Perfect. Okay, now tell us a little bit about you. Give us a little background.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Kasey. I'm a full-time digital nomad and traveler. I've been traveling since it's been about 10 years now, but full-time the last few years. I'm originally from Ohio, but I live in Guatemala now, and I love solo travel. It's my main passion in life, and I work in social media as a part-time to fund my travels.
That's so awesome. So actually something we were talking about right before we started recording was how you moved to Guatemala. So how long have you been in Guatemala, and what was that transition? I mean, Ohio to Guatemala, that's crazy. Like, so many people would be intimidated by that.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that. So what did that look like?
Well, honestly, I think it was a little bit more of a seamless transition than most people think, because I had been traveling already. So for me, I was traveling well before I decided to move. You know, it wasn't just jump straight in from Ohio to into Guatemala. So I was already kind of had the experience of being abroad and for multiple months at a time and things like that. And then it just felt like the right move for me to come to Guatemala. I went to Lake Atitlan for the first time in February, and that's where I call home now. And it's magical. It's one of the coolest places. There's a huge community here of just very supportive people, and I really enjoy it. So I just decided to move here. There are some definite differences between the US and here. Currently right now, my apartment doesn't have hot water. It's supposed to, but it's broken. So we're working on that. I had to take a shower the other day with a boiling, I boiled water and then poured it on myself because I was like, no more cold showers. But we're working on getting
That's hilarious.
So, yeah, it was entertaining. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so then tell us a little bit about where your passion from travel came from. I mean, where did you really find this in yourself where you were like, I have to travel? And what was maybe like the first trip like?
Yeah, so I think my passion for travel came from my family. We were always road tripping down to Florida when I was a kid. We went out west to California for like a 2-week adventure when I was like 10 years old. So we did a bunch of states, and we were pretty much only within the US, or maybe we would take a cruise or something like that. Or, one time we went to Canada, but I had always known that I had wanted to travel abroad. And back then I always thought of it, because I'm from a very small town. So I was always told this is a once in a lifetime trip. It's, you get one time to go abroad and do what you want to do. And then you come back and you just be normal 9-to-5 Kasey. And so I studied abroad in college, and I was like, oh, I love this. I want to do it more. And then once I graduated college, I went to business school. So I spent 4 years being told you have to, get the good grades to get the good internship, to get the good job, to work Monday through Friday so that, you can climb the corporate ladder, blah, blah, blah. And so I moved to Florida in 2016 when I graduated, and was like, okay, let me start my career. Let me get some money coming in. And it just felt off. I just couldn't place it. And now I think, doing some reflection actually recently, I realized that both my parents work for themselves, or they have, in the past, and they've never been the 9-to-5 people either. So I think, that really just influenced me way more than I expected. And so now it's been since 2018 when I quit my last official corporate full-time job, and I haven't looked back.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. And so what were some of the first places that you traveled to that just were incredible?
So I'm a Europe girl. I love Europe. I've been
Mm,
to all of Western Europe at this point, and I just keep going back every summer. It's amazing. And that's where I really got started. So when I traveled or when I studied abroad, I went to France for 6 weeks and did a couple of countries then, a lot of France. And then I was like, oh no, like I like Europe. I love the culture, the food. It was kind of like a great jumping point for me. And that's when I was kind of dabbling in a lot of my solo travel. And then I kind of just started branching out into like I did Thailand for a month and Japan. And then I started doing Central America and Mexico. And that was like every time you go somewhere, it's like a new part of the world. It's so exciting to like rediscover those excitements that you get when you go to a place for the first time.
that's so cool. So how many countries have you been to?
27.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Okay, so this past summer, like I said, in the intro, we went to Europe for the first time ever. It was insane. Okay, but ours was jam-packed. So it sounds like you've been going for like a month at a time to a lot of these places where we went for 2 weeks and we hit 11 countries, I think, like 11 or 10.
Yeah.
And it was like insane. We were like busting our butts to get from place to place, and it was so hectic. It was really cool though because I feel like we got to kind of dip our toes into traveling. And now that we've done that, I'm ready to like go back to some other places, maybe go back and stay longer, and just trying to really figure out that because I was shocked when I went to Europe. I was like, this is incredible. This is crazy. I love it. It was so
yeah,
amazing.
it's
Oh my
exciting.
gosh.
I think there's
Yeah. Do you have any like oh, go ahead.
okay, wait, pause real quick. I think there's a little bit of a lag. That's why.
And that's totally fine because actually it's
Okay.
recording yours separate and then me separate and then it'll put us together.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yes,
So what I was
exactly.
going to say, what I was going to say is that I think in the travel community, there's a little bit of a divide between the tourist and the traveler. And
Mm,
I do consider myself a traveler because I do spend more time in these countries, getting to know these cultures and whatever. But I think the reality of it is that everyone starts as a tourist. When I went to France for the first time, I was that typical person coming from America who didn't know anything about like how to respect the culture or how to like actually, absorb what I was taking in and things like that. And so like a 2 week Euro adventure is such a like a cliche in the US, but it's a huge jumping point to getting into more travel and it's kind of like wetting your feet, and then you get more excited and like, but those experiences make you who you are. And they're still just as incredible as the experiences that I have. Like I always recommend like getting started. Like people always ask, how did you get into solo travel? How did you, get
hmm.
into budget travel? And they think I just woke up one day and was like, oh, this is who I am. And, I just started, but that's not true at all. Like you have to start somewhere and baby steps are that great first place to do it.
That's so awesome. And I've never really thought about the difference between a tourist and a traveler, but that makes so much more sense because, like you said, everyone starts as a tourist, but that kind of love that you get that's like deep in you, and you're like, I have to come back here or I need to stay longer, kind of transitions you into a traveler where you really start to learn about the people and the food and the culture that you're around. And I think that's a beautiful transition. And I think you're at that point where so many people want to get to, but they just don't know how. So, with that being said, I would love it if you could walk us through a couple like tangible steps on what do you do? How do you even schedule these things out? I mean, what are the beginning steps? And then we'll get more into like the actual trip.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a couple of ways that you can do it. I know for a lot of my friends, I get asked, or even on my social media, like, how do you take a trip? How do you get the courage to do it? And there's always, again, like those segues into the solo travel. So you can look into group trips. Like I'm hosting a group trip. I just recently started doing that. But there's also plenty of resources out there where you can book group trips where you're going solo, but you're also in a group of people who have already planned this for you. So all you have to do is dedicate that you're going to like make these monthly payments to pay off your trip, and then you're good to go. And that's a great first way to like get your feet wet and see, okay, this is how it's done and this is how you book things. If you're looking at going on your own, I always break it up. I think the money aspect of it is very intimidating when it comes to travel. And that's one of the number one reasons besides time is I don't have the money to travel. I always look at it as I break it up. So I decide where I want to go first. And that could be looking at like Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, whatever it is, wherever I get my inspiration from. I decide on a country of where I want to go. And then I look at flights to see, okay, when's the best time to go to that place? When can I get the cheapest flight? And then I'll buy my flight first. And that'll be like my big, huge purchase. Because your three main expenses when you're traveling are going to be your plane ticket, your accommodations, and then your food and activities while you're there. So if you break that up into three smaller amounts, it doesn't seem as overwhelming. So you buy your ticket, you book it, you work on paying that off. And then as it gets closer to, about midway to your travel date, start looking at start looking at accommodations like Airbnbs, hostels, hotels, wherever it is you want to stay. Book that, work on paying that off. And then the last part is saving that little bit of money so that you can when you get to your destination, you have your budget just for your food and your activities. Do some research beforehand to make sure that you know like what it's going to cost. Like if it costs $80 to do this day excursion or whatever it is, that way you kind of have an estimate of how much to bring or how much to set aside. And then that way it's broken up into three smaller amounts rather than just being like, oh, I have this $2,000 vacation I have to pay for. It's so expensive. I don't have $2,000. Well, yeah, I break that up. And then every time I get paid, I help pay off, those things that I purchased.
That sounds so manageable. So how far in advance are you scheduling these out? Like, do you have all of your trips for 2023 planned out, or are you like a month out? Like, how far are you looking?
Personally, I actually have nothing planned for this year yet. I usually do have like a couple of bigger trips booked. But now that I am a digital nomad and I do have the freedom to kind of go wherever, whenever, I'm leaving this year up to a little bit more of spontaneity than I have in the past. But some people aren't digital nomads. They want to travel around their work schedules or whatever it is. And so it's good to book your tickets in advance, like 6 months in advance, to make sure, and I know a lot of people are like constrained with the time of year they can go and stuff like that, but the sooner you book your flight, the better.
Okay, awesome. And then can you explain digital nomad a little bit? I know we've used that phrase a couple of times here, and I just want any listener who's like, what is a digital nomad? Can you just break that down?
Yeah, of course. So in my mind, a digital nomad is someone that works completely remote from their laptop or phone, whatever you use. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like I got a full-time job and I work remotely wherever it is. You can do freelancing, or like I work in social media. So I do my TikTok channel and my Instagram. So I get paid for that. And then I also work in social media consulting and I teach English. So I don't have one job that like makes me a digital nomad. I'm more of like a freelancer who has a bunch of jobs, but I personally wanted to be able to travel whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted. So the flexibility and freedom to work online and work when the hours that I wanted to, that makes me a digital nomad. But it looks a little different for everybody, but just being able to be remote, independent, basically. Location independent.
Awesome. And then another thing that you mentioned was your group trips. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that for a lot of solo female wannabe travelers, that might be really intriguing. So what does that look like specifically with yours, but then also maybe other resources?
So yes, group trips are something that I highly recommend. Even before I started hosting my own, I always recommended group trips because a group trip, there are companies out there like Under 30 Experiences, Kontiki, like there's tons. Actually, I could probably give you a list later, but there's tons out there that they come up with different trips. So it'll be like a 10-day Croatia trip or a 2-week Central America trip where you hit a couple different countries or whatever it is. Like on these websites, they have tons of different itineraries. And the great part about these is that when you say, oh, I don't have anybody to travel with, you just go on their website and you book your spot on this trip. And then boom, you're going to have like 15, 20, however many people they accept, like built-in friends already on your trip. because it's going to be people who are either like one or two people, like maybe friends are going, or like other solo travelers are going to go, and they arrange everything for you. So transportation, I think usually flights aren't included, but like your transportation to and from the airport, where you're going to be staying at, what activities you're going to be doing, it's all taken care of for you. So if you feel really overwhelmed by the planning aspect of traveling, it's taken care of. And so my personal trip that I have is to Guatemala because I want to show people where I live and how amazing it is here. And we're going to spend a week in Antigua and Lake Atitlan. So we'll have a shuttle you fly into the airport. The shuttle will take you from the airport to Antigua. We'll stay a few nights in Antigua. And then from there, we will take a shuttle up to Lake Atitlan. We'll stay in Atitlan for a few days, and then they'll take a shuttle back to the airport and you fly out. So it's all arranged for you.
That's so nice. Okay. So are the, like, I don't know if this is the right word, like excursions planned as well, for that kind of thing?
So most of them have excursions built in, or they might be add-ons. For my specific one, ours are built in. And so we have, for example, a volcano hike. So we're going to hike an active volcano. We're going to do an ATV tour of the villages around Lake Atitlan. We're going to do a sunrise hike, some sunrise paddleboarding, yoga, things like that. And so that's all included in the trip already. So like maybe you're not like too big of a morning person. You're like, I don't want to do sunrise yoga. You don't have to do it, but it's already paid for in there. I do know that other group trips, sometimes they will, this is the package that we have. Oh, okay, when we get to, like, for example, in Thailand, we get to this island. Okay, today you have the option of a free day, or you can pay, $50 extra or whatever it is to do the excursion. And then some of the group will just like go off and explore on their own. And then some of the group will go to their excursion that they paid for.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Now, what if you're not doing a group trip? Let's say there's already one on the books, but you have no idea what you're going to do when you get to a new country. How do you navigate that? How do you find what you're going to do while you're there?
Yeah. So I actually just had this question on my TikTok the other day, and I made a video basically stating that in the beginning, I was very like, oh, I need to know what I'm going to do every day and every second and have everything planned. And the more I traveled, the more I realized the beauty in kind of being a little bit more relaxed on that. So before I start a trip, I will look on Pinterest, TikTok. TikTok's huge, obviously, now for researching, and Instagram. And I'll just look at, where other people have been. A lot of my friends are travelers, so I get a lot of inspiration from them. They've posted that they've been somewhere, and I'm like, amazing. I want to go to that bar on that beach in Keykalker, Belize, So I have like kind of a list of some stuff that I want to do. And I also look at different cities. So it's Google Maps, like you just type in the cities that you want to go to. So first, Pinterest. I'll be like, okay, what to do in Poland? And then it'll be like, okay, well, in Poland, these are the major popular cities: Gdansk, Warsaw, and Krakow. Okay, cool. So now I go to Google Maps and I type in, how far is Warsaw to Krakow? Okay, it's only a 2-hour train ride. Okay, I go to the website or Google and I type in trains from Warsaw to Krakow. Boom, they pop up. I go in, I book the one that I want for the time that I want. Train from Warsaw to Poland booked. And it tells you kind of like, where everything is relative. Because when you're going to a new country, you don't know, like, is this city on the other side of the country? Is it a 2-hour train ride away? Like, so it's definitely good to look at a map and just kind of get like your bearings figured out. I've also learned that it's nothing like your expectations. Like you always have these thoughts in your head, like, oh, this is what it's going to look like, or this is what I'm going to do. And then you get there and it just changes. And that's why I really recommend staying in hostels, because in hostels, you meet other solo travelers who've maybe, say you both met up in a city in, maybe you're in Budapest, right? And you're like, oh, I'm thinking about going to Prague next. Well, you met a traveler in the hostel that said, I was just in Prague. You should do this, this, and this. Okay, boom, done. Like that's what I'm going to do. Or the hostels offer different tours that you can do. Like in Montenegro this summer, we did a boat tour through our hostel. The port was right outside our hostel. We just walked onto the boat, and for 3 hours, we zoomed around the Bay of Kotor and just took a beautiful boat ride. So it's a little bit of planning, but then most of it's kind of just like on the go, recommendations from other people. like the hostel resources, free walking tours. Those are really good. I use Guru Walk, and you can go on guruwalk.com and you just type in the city that you're going to and the dates, and then it'll be like, oh, free walking tour, Athens, Greece. You book the walking tour, and someone will show you around the city for 2 hours. It's free. You tip them at the end, and then they usually give you really great recommendations. Here's a great restaurant you should eat at. Here's a great lookout that you should go check out after the tour, something like that.
Okay,
I don't have enough
taking
time to
notes
talk
because
about
that's
all of
genius.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so do you have any safety tips? Because I know that that's something that even myself, like when we went to Europe, I was like, oh, I'm nervous to stay in a hostel because I'm just nervous. What do you do to make sure that you're feeling calm and secure?
Yeah, safety is huge, right? It's the number one important thing that you can, especially as a solo female traveler. So, staying in hostels is not as scary as a lot of people think it is. I mean, do not base any of your assumptions on it from the movie. But like if you're a woman and you feel intimidated by staying in a mixed dorm where, also for those who don't know, a hostel is where you share a room with other people to save money. So if you stay in a hostel, there could be 6 beds in there. You don't know the other people who are staying in there, but it's $20 a night versus a $150 a night hotel. And so a lot of the hostels will offer mixed dorms where you have men and women, or you have the female only dorms where it's strictly just women. Some people prefer that. It is a couple dollars extra a night. And if you're just going on like a short-term trip, spend the extra $2 a night to make you feel comfortable. I travel full time, so those $2 a night, that adds up, I personally don't mind staying in mixed ones. I grew up with all boys, so snorers or, whatever it is, like that just doesn't bother me. But staying safe, practicing normal safety tips, or safety practices, like if you're in a huge city in the US, it's going to be the same in Europe, like make sure that you're not out alone at night after a certain time, like when it gets dark, or you're not getting too drunk when you're in an unknown city or unfamiliar city to you, things like that. You can check, I can't remember the name of the website off the top of my head, but there's a website, like an official government website for the US where you can go and it will tell you like, oh, there's been protests in Paris, so be careful if you're going to Paris, or it gives you updates on what is going on so that you're aware of it. So definitely keeping a little bit of a heads up about like, protests or civil unrest or things that are happening in the country that you're going to.
Okay, perfect. So do you have any like traveling hacks as far as products go? Or is there anything that you're like, I have to have this with me no matter where I'm going, or anything as far as like tangible items?
I was thinking about this before we hopped on, and I'm a minimalist. So for me, I always just say, okay, passport, anything that's expensive that I'm taking. So like phone, computer, I make sure that I have my chargers for those. Cause if you have a MacBook, like that's an expensive charger to like buy when you're gone. And then medications, those are like my base things that I'm like, I absolutely have to have with me. Everything else is replaceable or I can buy when I'm there. But if you're traveling abroad, or a couple of them are abroad, a couple of them are just in general, I always have my reusable water bottle on me because I do not like getting stuck without having water. I drink a ton of water every day. So it's nice to have one, and it's cold water. A international adapter. So my little adapter has every single country's plug on it that you can imagine. So that way, if I hop to different countries while I'm traveling, I just switch out the adapter, like you flip it up and then you just plug it into the wall and you have electricity, or, a little adapter for you. So those are two like major things that I always take with me. But like I said, I really travel light. I used to travel with like 4 toiletry bags, and now I travel with 1 toiletry bag and like a couple of things of makeup,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on something really important, because I did not realize this, is that most countries have different charger ports. Like you can't just plug your normal American whatever electrical thing into the wall. Like they all look a little different. Yeah. So if you're planning on traveling, that's important.
That is very important to have. And
oh my gosh. Okay.
it's a very quick Google search. Like, what plugs do they use in X, because actually in Guatemala, they use the same plugs that they do in the US. So I don't need an adapter. But if you're traveling to Europe, Australia, tons of different places, they use different adapters, and you're going to want that little plug that you plug, you plug your US one into the adapter, and then you plug the adapter into the wall, and it works. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So go ahead, pimp yourself out. That's what I always say. Tell us where people can find you. Tell us about your trip, the dates of it, and just the resources you provide so people who are obsessed with you right now, because I know I am. I love your videos so much. They can all go follow you and do all the things.
Yeah. So my TikTok and Instagram, Kasey Meets World, Kasey with a K. And I love sharing budget and solo female travel tips on there. I post a video every single day on TikTok. So you can follow me on those. I always respond to my DMs. I do have consultations that you can book as well. If you have, say you're a little overwhelmed and you don't know how to start planning your trip, and the tips that I gave you in this podcast you want to know more about, you can book a consultation with me. It's on my Instagram and my TikTok. My group trip is, like I said, Guatemala. We'll be doing Antigua and Lake Atitlan for a week, April 22nd to April 29th of 2023. So that's very exciting, coming up in, about 4 months. So I'm excited for that. And that's really about it, I think.
Awesome. Well, everything will be in the show notes as always. The links to consultations, the trip, all of her social pages will be in the show notes for your ease. And Kasey, thank you so much for coming on and talking to the Inspired Lady podcast listeners just about traveling and how they can make this possible. You are so amazing. And I am so excited because I feel so inspired right now. I am ready to go travel.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I always love doing this.